Welcome back to Photorec.tv. I'm Toby, and I'm guessing you clicked on this video because you're interested in what I have to say about Topaz Denoise. Here's what I used to say. I don't want to spend money for another program that I have to integrate into my workflow that has results that don't look that different from working in Lightroom. But that changed about a year ago, and I feel really guilty that I haven't made a video before then. In this video, I want to show you just how dramatic it can be in improving noisy images, significantly more so than working with just Lightroom's noise reduction or even Nik. I also want to show you a couple of editing tricks inside the program and to make sure you know that it's on sale right now, making a program that I already say is a good buy a fantastic value. Let's get started. Quick disclosure up front, I am a Topaz affiliate. Actually, you could be one too if you wanted. Anybody can sign up. It simply means that if you purchase their software through my link, which is right down below this video, I earn a small percentage of the sale. Topaz has never paid me to talk about their software, and I purchased what I'm about to talk about with my own money. The reason I'm talking about it now, as I mentioned, is it's on sale. There's a $20 discount plus another 15% savings using the coupon code DENOISE15. This brings the total price of the Denoise software down to just $51. And in this video, I am really just focusing on Denoise. I think the Sharpen AI is also a good program. I don't think it's as critical. It hasn't become as regular a part of my workflow as the Denoise has, but it is still a good program. And I haven't worked with the others to know enough yet, but I am impressed with these programs, and let me show you just how good Denoise is. All right, we're going to take a look at a couple of examples, both real world and studio, that really show the impressiveness of Topaz Denoise. Then I'm going to show you how exactly to use it, plus a quick trick for better control over your noise reduction. Last February, I photographed Sweeney, a good friend of ours, tour guide, bus driver in the Yellowstone area, inside this old bar. And I love this shot. He's got so much character in his face. So we zoom in, and after a little bit of Lightroom editing and a little bit of noise reduction, we can see that it's still a very noisy image at ISO 4000. A lot of noise in the background, a lot of noise on his face, even some of it obscuring some of the details. I'd heard a lot of people talking about Topaz Denoise, and this was the first image where I used this program and thought, wow, that's pretty impressive. Let's take a look side by side with Topaz Denoise. The difference in the background is astounding. But then another level on top of that is the detail in the face. So we haven't lost any. A lot of times the way to remove noise, basically the only way to remove noise in many programs, is to slightly blur the image a bit, to kind of mush that grain of noise into obscurity. But what happens when you do that is you mush the detail into obscurity as well. And you could just see we still have the pores on the face and the wrinkles and the character and the individual hairs and the mustache. They're all here. They all look fantastic, but look just at how buttery smooth the kind of less feature-rich areas are. We'll take a look down here along his jacket. It just looks nice and clean. It still didn't smush out these little bits, flecks of something that I probably should remove and edit out. They're not smushed, they're not gone. The detail in his cravat, is that what you call that thing? This is just great. And there are other programs out there that do noise reduction. Nik is one. I happen to have Nik already. I like a couple of the other kind of functions of it. And so I ran it through its noise reduction just to kind of compare. And so now we've got Topaz Denoises on our left and Nik is on our right. This is as good as I could get Nik without starting to really smush the details. Pretty significant difference. It's a little bit better than the Lightroom, but it is nowhere near the Topaz version. Let's jump over to a quick studio example. All right, here's a straight out of camera. Actually, sorry, not straight out of camera. Basically, I've done some minor edits to this image, adjusted exposure a little bit, highlights, shadows, etc. I haven't done any noise reduction to it. This is what it looks like, ISO 6400. I threw in this little microphone wind dampener because it's got some great detail in there, some really fine detail that we're going to be able to use to make an adjustment. Now, if we take a pop over, here is Lightroom. I was a little more aggressive with noise reduction than I typically am, but this is as far as I had to push it to really start to see the noise go away. You can see that there's less noise overall in this image, but you should also be able to see that the fuzz, the fur, the hair, whatever you want to call that, is also starting to lose definition. Let's look at these two side by side. So we've got the original on the left, Lightroom noise reduction on the right. And again, kind of around the penguin, looks all right, but we move over here and we can really see that we've lost a lot of detail in that area. So let's look at how Topaz did. All right, we swapped. We've got our Topaz denoise version on the left and the Lightroom's noise reduction on the right. Let's move over to the little fuzz. So first thing, when I look at this, I feel like noise reduction hasn't been done. I mean, there wasn't a ton of noise in here to begin with. It kind of hid inside all of this detail. But all of the detail is still there, and you look up here and you realize that there's not really any noise. You look over here and you see that large amount of noise, plus that detail area has gotten smushed. We move back over to our little Arctic photographer, and he's just as sharp as he can be. Here he almost looks a little soft, a little out of focus. Another thing I want to draw your eye to is this chart's getting kind of banged up. It's got a little marks on it here and there. You can see all of those marks. You look over here at the Lightroom, and some of them are there, but they're all quite faint. Really impressive stuff. Let's look at another real-world example that can be tricky. We've got a nice Milky Way shot. I photographed this late summer. Stars can be very difficult for noise reduction because the fainter stars often seem very similar to noise. And if we zoom in here and take a look down at this Milky Way area, this is with some editing in Lightroom, no noise reduction. Over here we've got noise reduction, and you can see all of the little speckles between the stars are gone. It's just that much cleaner. And I almost feel like you see more stars over here because the noise doesn't make it noisy and distracting. So it's clean, and each individual star, even the faint ones, stand out a little brighter in this example. All right, let me take this original picture of Sweeney, the one that really impressed me, and show you how editing in Topaz denoise works. So I've got it in Lightroom. I've made some adjustments in Lightroom to this image. I usually make my general kind of exposure, my basic panel adjustments first. I'm going to right-click, and once you've installed Topaz software, it should appear here in your little Edit in context menu. So I'm going to choose Denoise, and I do want to edit it with my Lightroom adjustments. That's what that box asks. Okay, it takes a moment to open up and start a preview generation. So across the top, you've got your zoom, your view of the original image, and then your desired view. Single view is the image with the editing applied. Split view is a before and after, or you could do a side-by-side comparison, or you can run the comparison view. This might be a great place for beginners to start. What it's going to do is it's going to give you the original and then the 3 different versions based on the AI mode that you will select here. So we've got Denoise AI, AI Clear, and Low Light. That's going to mean that you're going to see it generate previews 3 times as it runs and crunches the numbers on the image 3 different times to give you each one. Now I like to move this to the most interesting elements of the image. Sometimes you have to look in a couple of different places. In this case, I really just kind of want to watch the face. And it is going to generate the preview again for each of these. And on my older iMac, it does take a bit, but this is something that has sped up significantly in the last couple of months. If you tried Topaz a year or 2 earlier and you were frustrated with how long it took to do the generations, the preview generations, it's much better now. So now we get a quick look side by side. Here's Denoise, here's AI Clear, and here's the low light version. Typically what I'll do is pick whichever one looks the best and start to work with it. Every once in a while I get lucky and it looks great with the settings that Denoise has chosen. More often than not, I'm going to make some minor adjustments to it. In this case, even though denoise might not be my favorite, I'm going to go with just the denoise. So let's move it back to kind of a split view. We're going to be in AI mode denoise. And I'm going to back off the noise removal and put it somewhere around 40. As I've worked with this program, I've started to realize what works best for me and the images that I'm feeding it. You're going to do the same. But basically, it's kind of a trial and error process of moving the slider a little bit, watching the areas that have detail to make sure they remain with detail, watching the areas that don't, see how they develop as well. And I just caution you with this program, and especially the Topaz Sharpen, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to end up in a situation where you've smooshed detail too much, or in the case of the sharpening, you've over sharpened and then you've ended up with halos. So a little less is better in many of these cases. So here we go. Left-hand side is that original, a lot of noise. Right-hand side, so much smoother, but we're not losing any of the detail in this area as well. And if I felt like I wanted to bring back some more of this detail, I could work with the Recover Original Detail slider. And I could also enhance sharpness. That's going to have kind of a very similar effect. If you'd like to see what Topaz suggests, you can just hit the auto and it's going to do that. But that's kind of what we saw when we first chose the 4x4x4. You do have masking tools, but I'm going to show you a cool trick in just a minute. The masking tools allow you to specify where exactly you want noise reduction applied or not applied. In some cases, there might be sections of the image that don't need any noise reduction at all. So there's no sense in running the program on those areas. If you're happy with the settings, you hit the Apply button. And now this takes a little bit longer than preview generation, but it's going to save this image. I'm going to speed this up because my iMac's a little bit older. And when it's done, you land back in Lightroom with the new image sitting alongside the original image. Now let me show you that cool trick. Let's move over to this owl here. Now let's use this owl as an example for the editing trick. So this is a little noisy. ISO 1250, then after a little bit of editing, we definitely see some noise in the background. It hides fairly nicely in this great gray owl's feathers though. I'm not too worried about the owl, but I'd like to clean up the background a bit. Of course, I could jump right to Topaz and use their mask tools, just apply to the background, but I want to go to Photoshop because Photoshop's masking tools are superior in my mind. Not a huge difference, but between their tools and the ability to then just work with layers, I think makes this a lot more impressive and easy to work with. Let's maximize our workspace here. We don't need that. All right, and let's zoom in a little bit. And just real quick, I'm going to select our owl. Let's see how select subject works here in this example. Hey, not bad. For the purposes of this video, I think that we're just going to just real quick take a little bit more of those feathers there. There are other ways to do this. There's a million ways within Photoshop to do a little bit of masking, but you know what? I'm pretty happy with that. So let's move back out of quick mask mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this owl and paste. So I've put the owl on its own layer. And I've got the background layer, which still does have an owl on it as well. But now with the background layer selected, I'm going to duplicate it. So I've got two background layers and I've got the owl. With this background layer selected, I'm going to go to Filter, Topaz Labs, Topaz Denoise. And the idea is very, very similar. So in Lightroom, you end up in Topaz, you edit, then you end up back in Lightroom. It's exactly the same for Photoshop. So invoking that plugin from Photoshop pops you over to Topaz. You can make your adjustments, and when you save, it's going to bring you back into Photoshop with whatever layer you had selected is the one that got changed or edited. Now in this case, we are seeing everything. We're seeing the owl too. Hold on to this thought though. If you're not familiar with layers in Photoshop, this might be a little confusing, but we have an owl back in Photoshop on top of this one. So I'm going to be very aggressive with my noise reduction. Just grab that and yank it sky high. I don't care what happens to the owl because I have a version back in the other one that I'm going to work with in just a moment. So just going to move that up. We're going to watch this background noise just kind of be obliterated and smoothed out very nicely. All right, that's looking a little bit better. And I feel like even with this noise reduction, we really aren't losing much in the owl itself. That's impressive. We're going to hit apply. All right, and we're back in Photoshop. I'm going to rename this layer Denoised. Now, this is fun. Yeah, I said fun. We zoom in, and if you remember, yeah, noise is gone. But let's just hide this layer for a second. There's the original. There's the denoised. What I like about this is that preview can be just a little slow in Topaz. So being able to just quickly hide or show the layer just really makes it easy to see the difference. So let's check out just our owl. We know the background has gotten nice and smooth with that noise gone. But what has happened to our owl even when we were very aggressive? Let's see the original and after the fact. Look at that. So this is that Topaz software doing some magic. It really knew our subject, the owl, and its algorithms left it alone. But let's say that we wanted to draw out a little bit more detail from this owl, just the owl. So I've moved up to the just the owl layer, and I'm going to go to Filter, Topaz, Denoise. Now, if I wasn't teaching just denoise in this video, Sharpen may be the one I go to, but here's why I think you can get away with just denoise if you're not crazy about always sharpening things, because it has sharpen built in. No, it's nowhere near the same level as the sharpen from Topaz, but it does extract a bit more detail at times. So in this case, I don't really want to remove much noise from the owl. And notice that we can tell exactly what layer we're working on right now. We're working on just the layer because the rest of it is. But let's say recover original detail and enhance sharpness. Those all look good. And actually, I'm not even going to wait for the preview in this case. I'm just going to go ahead and hit apply. Let's see how we did. Now remember, we've got our owl layer sitting on top of the denoised owl, sitting on top of the original background owl. Let's just see. So we really cranked up the sharpness a little bit further than I think I would. You can see that here we've the denoised version, we've lost a little bit of detail around the eyes, but now that we've cranked up the sharpness in the denoise program, we have drawn out a good bit of that detail without really bringing in a bunch of noise. We wanted to see what this owl looked like versus the original owl as we came straight in. So now I've hid the middle layer. We are seeing the owl denoised on top of the untouched background layer. Let's turn the owl off so we see the original and after. That's subtle. So that does show you that if you want to work sharpening more, that the Topaz Sharpen would be a good way to do that. But now we've got all three. It's up to you what you do at this point. I just want to point out that this image does need more work. There's distracting subjects and objects around. But if you're done with it and you want to return to Lightroom and you don't think you'll be editing further in the future, you should, of course, flatten these layers or merge these layers down to just one. It's going to take up a lot less room. If there's any chance you might come back and edit at any time, though, you should leave those layers because you can use them in the future. Then I'm just going to close this. For anybody who doesn't know, who hasn't spent time editing, I've just closed that now. And when I come back to Lightroom, sitting next to the original is my edited from Photoshop. They sit side by side unless you have some funny filters on. And this is, of course, where we can zoom in and compare and see that a lot of this noise is gone here. And I think we have better detail, especially in those feathers coming around the eyes. Thanks for watching this long. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you give this video a thumbs up so other people know it's worthwhile. And if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button along with the little bell. And if you plan to purchase Topaz Denoise or any one of the Topaz software applications, you can use that link right down below this video. It is a very nice way to thank me for my time. Which example did you think was the most impressive? Leave that down in the comments below. Bye-bye.